Hello, everybody. Hello, hello.
Hey, Chef, again.
Hello again. Oh, it's been such a long time.
I
Hey,
know,
Chef.
right? I actually got there this morning and they said they had problems last week, so the cart wasn't ready when I got there this morning. So I had to.
Yeah, there were quite a few people out last week, including most of the purchasing department. And
Oh,
poor Zach, who is actually still one of your classmates. I think he still has one or two classes he's finishing up. He's a part-time employee, and he was doing the best he could to kind of
okay.
the fort and take care of everything. Um, is it just me, or is I look pretty orange? I think it might be the lights that I have in here.
Okay. But you're good.
How's everybody else? Andy, good to see you.
Good to see you, Chef.
Kathy and Christy's here. Kathy, glad that you're here at least for the first little while. But I'm a former band geek myself, and so whenever you need to, don't feel like you need to rush either. Being a good supporter of the band program, it's important.
Yeah, he's in percussion too, so you
Oh,
can.
well, you ought to get bonus points for that. I won't give them, but I think there ought to be some bonus points anyway. What is he? Is this high school?
Yes, it's high school.
Is he? Is this a marching contest or the winter concert?
Yeah, it's like a winter concert. Yeah, but it is the marching band. But he's also in jazz band.
Okay. In the marching band, is he playing snare? Is he playing tenors?
He's playing snare.
Snare. Okay. Do you want to go on to college?
Yep, he does.
Does he want to do any music in college?
He wants to go into medicine, but we'll see. He may end up in music.
Well, regardless of what he studies, anymore today, if a scholarship is available, and you can work things into your class schedule and work schedule and whatnot, scoring any kind of scholarship, I personally think is incredibly valuable in paying for higher education. And the band is a good way to at least get a portion of tuition covered. I think anymore today, if I understand, at least in Arkansas, the schools that have degrees in music, so full scholarships are available to music majors, but half and quarter partial scholarships are available to anybody that marches in the marching band, regardless of what your major is. I was a music major, and so all of my participation in music in my undergraduate studies that was my major. So those were the classes I need to take, but it also helped fund the rest of my undergraduate studies. And I had several, even playing on the percussion line with me, there were math majors, a couple of science majors. I was an English minor. There was another English major. There were two that went into law enforcement, and they received partial scholarships. And all they had to do to maintain those scholarships was marching band in the fall and concert band in the spring. Show up and play, and half of their tuition was covered. My son was also a percussionist. When he started at UCA, he went on to finish at Brigham Young University in Utah. But at UCA, he was on a partial scholarship. I think it was quarter. I don't I don't remember, but he played in the band. He only did it a semester, I believe. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that. Bonus knowledge, I guess, or not bonus knowledge, whatever the case may be. Let's go ahead and drive. Let's drive in. Hold on here. Did I just freeze and get? Do you see the screen? Do you see me? Do you hear me? I had a little glitch or something. Okay, so I can see sand. Okay, good, good. So we didn't get all knocked out. I think we're going to look at 4 plates today. How about? Oh, I forgot this was here. I know today is Monday, but let's just pretend like it was Tuesday. This is just funny. So I found this. I love tacos, and yeah, if it's Taco Tuesday, anyway, I won't explain or anything. I'll just disregard that. But this next one, now I'll just give you a second to look at that and kind of ponder it for a second. And so San already gets it and just shaking the head, and he's already shaking his head. Yes, chef humor. We're a little past midterm, and it's worth taking just a little breather and laughing at ourselves and laughing and smiling, and you're going to make it through all of this stuff. You're going to make it through. So yes, thinking like a mathematician, putting your pie, your casserole, I don't know, this might be some kind of a cobbler. Putting it in the oven at 120 degrees is really not as easy as it sounds in this way of thinking. And okay, enough of the ha ha ha. Okay, success, suggest. What are the successes and what do you suggest? Your restaurant, Snapper in Papillote, go.
I love the way the sauce just kind of did the little zip across there. And maybe it's a little too crowded. Maybe that's the way they wanted it to be, but I think it looks good, but it seemed like it's a little too much on top.
So
But
what would you do different? Given this, based on this, what would you do? How would you suggest changing?
I would take off a little bit of the veggies. There was a little, I think it's too many of the, what is that? The zucchini looks like.
There's zucchini, squash, pearl of carrots right on the top.
Yeah, I like the carrots right on the top. That's perfect. But I think there's a little too much of the zucchini. It's like it's covering up too much of, well, you can see the rice, but it just seems like it's a little too crowded. But other than that, it's a good, clean plate. It looks good. I'd eat it.
Yes. I might put the zucchini over on the sauce. Or the carrot, one of the two of those.
What else? Anybody else? One thing that we don't get very well, obviously, is a whole three. One of these days, we're going to figure out how to, with any camera, you take a picture and it automatically we can manipulate it and it be a 360 degree, turn it all the way around. We could all do that, but we would all have to have pretty expensive cameras, and we don't need to invest in that. This is just, a downward look. And so we are missing a little bit of direction, and that gives us ratio and proportion and things like that.
That makes sense, because probably looking at it from the sideways, it probably doesn't look that way.
I bet you're going to have a little more height if
Yeah,
at the plate from the side,
right. Yeah,
a different vantage point. What about the color on the plate?
I like the color. I mean, it's popping. The color is popping.
Looks good.
Yeah, I like the use of color too. And I think you're right. I think they probably did get pretty good height on that plating.
What do you think about the sauce?
I mean, like I said, I like the use of how they did the sauce. I like that.
I was trying to do that, but couldn't quite get it to turn out.
Some of that's going to depend on viscosity. Obviously, viscosity of the sauce is gonna make a difference. Not every sauce is going to work that way. I would suggest more sauce, more of a dollop before you make your swish, before you run your spoon through. Then it would be cleaner if you see the air quotes. If you start with a little more sauce, I think this is a little thicker. You can tell that this is a very viscous sauce, and so when that's the case, it needs a little bit more to get the visual appeal, the impact that you're after. Well done. I'm not going to call anybody out. I can't. Christy, was this your?
Yep, that was my plate.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sauce was
Good job, Christy.
thank you. The sauce was kind of the thing that didn't work so well. It kind of turned into gravy, if I'm honest. And I was like, that's not really what I wanted, but I thought my carrots turned out pretty good. So I was pleased with that. And I was like, well, the sauce, I'll roll with it.
I think it's all great. The takeaway is this needs to be on right here. If you can see my cursor, where you put the dollop, where you originally started the sauce, there just needed to be more. And then use the back of your spoon and give the zhuzh. It would be a little cleaner. Even if it's kind of gravy-like, a little bit more would make it. I love the carrots. What did you do? Did you use one of those? What do you call it? The kind of noodle. The little machine. I've gone kind of blank. The thing that you used to make zucchini noodles.
Technical. I have these little teaspoons that I eat my ice cream with, because I think you're supposed to have a proper spoon for an ice, just for ice cream. And so they're really skinny. So when I fried up the carrots, I put them in, in the grease and got them kind of crispy, but enough that I could still move them. And so I just wrapped them around my skinny spoon, kind of like, I guess you would curl hair, and then held it there. And then they came out looking kind of like little ribbons.
So these are fried. You did kind of one of the video.
Yes.
Was very good. Right on. Anybody else have anything for Christy or for all of us? Good job, Christy.
Thank you.
Next victim.
I like the rice. I like how much height that you got with the rice and that it, stayed together like that. I think that looks really cool.
And I like the use of the sauce where you have a dot there, well, a little bit more than a dot, and then you look like you got a swoosh up under the bottom of it. And
Yeah,
then, yeah, and the color looks good. But it also looks like two eyes and a face. But it's cute.
Two eyes and a face. Oh, I can see it. Now that you said that, I can see that. I didn't see two eyes and a face.
But I like the use of the color.
I'd put the sauce that's behind the rice in front of the rice.
Oh, yeah. I can see that, having it in front. Well, but you got
And
that
then-
little swoosh there coming out from under it.
It actually started with two swishes and then the one on the right got covered up by the rice.
Oh, is this you, Andy? Is this yours?
It is.
Oh, okay. I like it.
Andy made a comment. If you don't mind me sharing, you in Andy's taste little essay, I think it was in that, or maybe in one of the comments, mentioned how plating can be like playing golf. And I think this is true you can liken this to any discipline, any sport, any instrument, anything. Improvement comes just by practice. And things like manipulating a spoon to get the right amount of dollop, manipulating the back of the spoon or holding the back of the spoon at just the right angle, or applying just the right amount of pressure to give you the zhoosh, to give you the swish, the effect that you want. I really do like and appreciate the liking this to golf, because all that I've learned about golf. I used to play golf, and I don't have time. I haven't had time for years, but holding the club to keep the golf club, the face of the golf club at just the right angle takes practice and practice. And, I spent a lot of time on a driving range before one day it just kind of clicked. Oh, I swing like this, or I hold the club just like this. And you start to get used to that feel. And if it feels different, anyway, the point is that golf was a good analogy, because you don't go play putt-putt once or twice and then go to a PGA course and you're ready for the PGA after 2 nights on a putt-putt course, miniature golf. And so it takes quite a bit of practice and doing it again and again to get the feel for the club, for the club face and the right angle and how you stand, and all these little bitty details all add up. And some people, I for one, my golf game, I have a very, very natural straight drive. Except I lift my head up too early. And because I lift my head up too early, if any of you are golfers, Andy, I would take it that you have spent some time out on the golf course. I lift my head up too early and I top the ball. It's a beautiful straight drive whenever I do top the ball, which is about 60% of the time. It's perfectly straight for about 50 feet. I might get 100 feet, not yards. 40% of the time, I mean, I've got 150 yards, 200 yards, right where I want it to go, unless there's water. If there's water feature, my ball's going in the water almost all the time. Anyway, my point is what we're doing is just like that. It takes do it again and then do it again, and all of a sudden you're not even, it'll be imperceptible, and then one day, oh, I hold it exactly like this, or it'll just work. I don't think I put Andy, you gave 2 pictures, I believe, and I did. I kind of like this one better, and it had to do with the rice. There was actually, it appeared to be a little bit less rice in this plate than the one before, and I think the ratio, the portion, this is a little better portion size.
Yes, the other one used a bigger ramekin, and I think it was too much rice. But the other picture was better, except for having too much rice, unfortunately.
Oop. On your mark, get set, go.
I like that it's like not all completely in the middle, which we all know I like that style anyways, but because I do that every week, but I like how that looks like that. And it looks, the rice and everything looks really uniform. Like I like I couldn't get mine to do that. So I'm like really noticing y'all getting that. So I like that. And I think the only thing I would change is I might have done a little bit smaller portion, but that's just me. I think the veggies look really, really nice. It gives some good color that they're, I guess, like julienne, maybe
Julienne.
not quite julienne, but like they're, they have a color to them, and then the other veggies are kind of tucked away under there. I like that.
Yeah, I think the meat, it was too much meat on there. It looks, yeah. It could have been smaller. The meat could have been smaller.
Very clean though.
Yeah, I too like like how the rice is, and probably from a different perspective, we could probably see that there's quite a bit of height there.
Yes. Again, I'm not going to call out anybody or who did what, but I'm just going to ask to the void, and if the void wants to answer, that's fine. Was there a sauce?
That's my plate, and I can't remember. I don't think I did a sauce.
There
I didn't. No, I didn't do a sauce.
there doesn't always have to be a sauce on every plate all the time.
That's what I thought, so that's why I really didn't do one. But it looks like I probably should have on this one.
Have you all ever heard this phrase, this adage, the secret's in the sauce?
Yeah.
I, for one, as a chef, on any entree plate, I don't think a plate is complete without a sauce. Now that's not 100% of the time, but because of that, you notice, really up to now, everything that we've done, there's been some kind of protein, some kind of starch, some kind of vegetable, and generally some kind of sauce. I think, if I remember, y'all can correct me. I even kind of in passing mentioned last week that one possibility could have been the fluid, the juices that are left in your packet could go in a pan, be reduced and mounted with butter. Not a full-on beurre blanc, but depending on if you used wine or what you used, you could have had a butter sauce. You could do the same thing with cream, and it would create a sauce. The only thing you would want to avoid is don't add Parmesan cheese and cream and try to come up with some kind of an Alfredo sauce, because cheese and fish, especially in classical food, that really doesn't go together very well. But yeah, I think now sometimes, especially while we're learning to do this, it's whatever vessel, whatever ramekin, whatever little bowls that we have around the house to make these timbales, to make these kind of packed potato or packed rice presentations. In the restaurant world, we would be very deliberate about the size of the vessel we would use to make the timbale.
Yeah, I used a half a cup. That's what at first I did a cup and it was too big. So I started back over and then I went back and did a half a cup, and that was perfect.
Over half of the world subsists on rice.
Mm-hmm.
So a cup of rice or 3 cups of rice, to lots and lots of people around the world, the more rice, the better. We're, trying to, a half a cup of rice, I think, in your healthy foods and nutrition class, you'd probably learn, well, that's a pretty good portion. We shouldn't use, 2 or 3 cups of rice, which is what I eat for dinner.
Me too, or more.
3 servings that's in a box of the rice-a-roni, the rice pilaf. And I'm TMI, but y'all already know that I like McDonald's French fries, and I like the crunchy tacos from Taco Bell, and I like the salsa from Chili's. So to be fully transparent, now you're going to know everything about Chef. I kind of like the box rice pilaf from the rice-a-roni stuff. I know it's kind of garbage food, but hey, you like what you like, right? There's just my wife and I at home. I make 2 boxes. She'll have just a little bit of leftovers. So if you read the nutritional analysis on the back of the box, 1 box is 3 servings. I make 2 boxes. There's 6 servings. I eat half, so I get 3 servings. My wife gets a serving and a little, and then the next day she'll have the leftovers, a serving and a little, and she does right. She does good. I misbehave, and there you go. That's
one thing I learned about that bit. I wish I had I didn't cut my pieces small enough before I started. And then you couldn't cut it afterwards, because I tried it and it was junk. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to go with this other size.
So let's learn from that, Sam.
Yeah, I did.
You cook the fish and then you cut it after it's cooked. It's gonna shred. It's gonna shred where you're trying to cut it, and you don't have clean looking cuts.
Right, but I thought this was gonna be small enough when I cut it. Before I cooked it, I thought that was going to be small enough. But then once it got finished, I was like, okay, that's too big. So one of the pieces I tried to cut it to see, and I was like, that's not gonna work. I'm gonna have to go with that size. So there you go. Yeah, I learned. I need to. Yeah.
Y'all tuck that away for future to remember in the future when we're dealing with fish. This is true for any fish, really. If when we're dealing with fish, it needs to be cut and trimmed and sized and portioned before it's baked, fried, steamed, whatever it is you do with it. You really want to cut it and prep it before you cook it, so that you don't get torn and the shredded look where you're trying to cut it.
I did the same thing, Sam. I put my little packets in there. I made 4 because I was afraid I wouldn't like fold them correctly, you know, like one would bust. But I tried to like cut the fish and do something, and it looked so bad. And I was like, okay, so that's not gonna work. And then I had like a bunch of fish left over, and I put it on a little baking sheet, and I didn't put any parchment paper down, and we're still soaking that pan. So you can learn. So, oops.
Christy, we're not laughing at you. We're laughing near you. We've all done it. And
I
so,
know. And the house smells a little bit, but the cats love it. I don't know.
Oh, this is nice.
This is beautiful.
Oh, my goodness. This is really, really nice.
Yes, it is.
We're gonna have to make Kathy go to another class because she's
I know.
making us all look bad.
I bet her fish didn't stick to the pan.
Probably didn't.
Beautiful.
Kathy, are you still here? Are you still with us, or?
She left us.
Okay,
Yeah.
she's probably already, yeah, she has a band concert to go to. She'll get the recording though.
Yeah.
Oh,
I love the way she did the veggies
I do too. It's gorgeous.
and then the dots, love that with the sauce, and the rice is just perfect. It's a perfect serving, not too big. And that's what I needed my fish to look like. That
Me
little, instead of that big piece I had. Yeah, I like the use of the color and the height. Yeah, that's pretty.
She did something fancy with like a piece of, like, I can't quite tell, but I think that's like lemon and then like some sprigs of herbs or whatever on the fish right there. That looks pretty.
this
Mhm.
is probably, I mean, it looks a little like dill, or I bet this is some of the fronds.
Right,
the
from
fennel.
Yeah.
from the fennel. Yeah, that's what it looks like. Yeah.
So can we eat that?
Yeah.
So there you go. I was gonna wait, and thank you. Andy already went right to that.
I
Can
have to find something wrong with what Kathy did because this is just too good.
well,
I know, right?
And she would laugh if she was here. So
she would. Can we eat the lemon?
I can.
That's what I was gonna.
Do
I'm not sure I want to eat
the entire
not the whole.
right
Yeah.
here with the pith, and if you put this in your mouth just like this, you're going to get more bitter with this amount of pith right here, just the white. The ratio of delicious citrusy lemon versus the pith of the lemon, which is going to be bitter, you're going to get a little more bitter. Can you eat the fronds of the fennel? There, the fronds of the fennel. Can you eat that?
Even if
I
you
can't.
could, I wouldn't. I would, when I have food like that and it has that, I just put it over to the side.
That's one of the points I've been trying to make throughout the semester. If there's stuff, it may look pretty, but if it's stuff that really just you scrape off to the side because it's just the pretty, but you don't eat it, then we want to avoid putting it on the plate in the first place. try to visualize this if you can. What would it do to this plate to not change anything at all and just leave off this little wedge, this little piece of lemon and the fennel fronds? You have the color from the fish. Do you think that would change this plate very much?
I don't think so.
I think it might even put more focus on the fish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think it would change it that much. It'd still be a good plate.
My suggestion would be exactly that. I wouldn't change anything else on this plate. I would leave off the fennel fronds and the lemon. Now, it's perfectly acceptable to serve on the side, or even have pre-presented on the table. If this is going to be the meal, if this is your entree presentation for the fish course of a multi-course dinner, is perfectly acceptable to serve before the plates come out. You bring out to the table maybe some small dishes with a couple of lemon wedges, to squeeze some lemon on the fish or around the plate. That's perfectly acceptable. Well, there you go. You serve that little side of lemon wedge that's usable, but even then, you're not gonna just chaw on that lemon wedge. I think this would be a perfectly perfect plate, even without the lemon wedge and the fennel fronds. Anybody have anything else? All right, let's talk about this week. Okay. I know San has gone to pick up groceries. It's a lot of groceries, isn't it? There's a lot of, it's little stuff, but it's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot. Yes.
If you've looked at the week 10 folder, and if you've opened up the recipes, I'm going to tell you already up front, we have 4 recipes in the recipe folder. You have the product, or you're going to pick up the product to execute 2 of those recipes. Okay. You have one recipe called beef bourguignon. This week is braising and stewing. Okay. So we're going to stew. The most classical of all classical stews is beef bourguignon. And the recipe I gave you is essentially Julia Child's beef bourguignon. And so a little bit of bacon, a little bit of beef. The beef that you're getting is eye of round or inside round or top round. It's tough meat. It's go to Walmart, go to Kroger, go to Harps and buy a package of stew meat. It's not meat that you're going to just saute really quick. And if you pop it in your mouth, it's going to be real chewy. And so it is meat that needs to be slow cooked over a considerable period of time. That's going to break down some of the fibers. Okay. That is the meat. They're already in chunks. If you want to cut it down a little bit smaller, you can cut it down a little bit smaller. If you want to trim away, this was done in meat and seafood. So there may be some pieces of fat that you want to remove. There may be pieces of fat that you want to keep. Off the top of my head, the only thing, if you're going to follow exactly that beef bourguignon recipe and follow it step by step by step, again, we've talked about this before. The only bum deal, the only unfortunate thing about being in this online class is we can't send you home. We cannot send you home with alcohol.
Wow. Right.
And this week, making the beef bourguignon calls for a pretty fair amount of red wine.
Yeah, 2 cups.
Oh, is that it? That's right. I scaled the recipe down whenever I posted it.
Mhm.
The original Julia Child's original recipe is a bottle
Oh,
of wine, but it's more meat and it's more stock and it's more of everything. But you're making like any soup or stew, it's really hard to make just 2 servings in one pot. So with that said, now y'all listen, you're going to have all of this stuff. You don't have a bone that with marrow. That would be really
mhm.
nice to add, but don't go run to meat markets and try to find round bones or sections of femur. That's this right here. This is a bone, and right in the middle is the bone marrow. That adds a little viscosity, but that adds incredible flavor as well. We don't need to do that. And you didn't get that you picked that up in your groceries. And that's not real easy to find, especially around here. Okay, but you'll get your beef chunks. I think you get a little bit of bacon,
Mhm.
some onions and carrots, and blah 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 blah. Your typical meats. You want to pay attention. This is not something, unless you're going to do this, slow cook it in a crock pot. If you're going to use either the stovetop or the oven method, and I've done so many of these recipes. If someone has already printed the recipe or has the recipe in front of you or nearby, leave the directions I gave you have some options. There's a stovetop method, there's a crock pot method, there's a put it in the oven method. In most restaurants, the classical traditional method of a beef bourguignon is going to be in the oven. Our smaller portion at home, maybe preferred method at home, is going to be the crock pot method. I promise you, if you're only doing, which you're only picking up enough product to do like 2 or 3 servings, to try to do that volume on the stovetop, even with a lid and everything, it's going to be very, very difficult to control the temperature in the pot, which is going to make it difficult to control the volume of liquid that stays in the pot. And it's going to cook too fast on the stovetop. Stovetop method is for scaling that recipe larger. But in a restaurant, we would use large braziers. How many of you have had or are in stock soups and sauces? I think most of us are in stock soups and sauces. And are you taking that in the stocks lab, the stock soups and sauces lab?
Are we taking what? I'm sorry, I missed the first part.
Stock soups and sauces, that class, are you taking it in the stocks lab?
Oh, yes,
The big round steam kettle.
yes.
There's that large square that sits next to the steam kettle. It's called a tilt skillet. That's a device that we would use for large volume of doing exactly something like this. It's essentially a brazier on steroids.
Oh, wow.
I like all the ways that you can prepare it because I love my Instapot.
Well, okay. I don't have one. I have a regular crock pot.
I have a regular crock pot too, but I have an Instapot too. I asked for one.
Well, enjoy that. Here is, it looks like a beef stew. And it is a beef stew. It is a combination cooking method. Remember that chart from the beginning of this semester? I think that was mentioned in Food 1 as well. But what constitutes a combination cooking method? What's the definition of a combination cooking method?
I almost said it. It's with a C.
I'm not looking for one word. I'm not looking for a textbook.
More than one method, right?
Yeah, so we combine, we put, and in this case, we're going to put a dry cooking method and a wet cooking method together.
Okay.
This dish requires both. The Maillard reaction, especially for proteins, the Maillard reaction that's going to be the beginning of flavor development requires us to sear the meat. So you don't, contrary to grandma's stewing method, where we dump all the ingredients together in the crock pot or the stew pot and turn it on medium or medium low and stir it every, 20 minutes and let it cook for 3 hours. And eventually the meat gets cooked and it cooks down a little bit. That's good and it's yummy, and we grew up on that. But real flavor development is going to start, first of all, in searing the meat. Now listen, sear the meat in batches. Don't dump all of the meat into the saucepan or saute or whatever you're using. Don't dump all of that meat in at one time. Okay. There needs to be space all around each individual piece of meat, right? We've talked about this before. Don't crowd the pan. Don't put all of the chicken in the pan at one time. There's got to be space all around. Then the steam that's created escapes instead of condensing inside of itself, and then you end up with a bunch of nasty gray water. That gray water is nasty. It doesn't add to the flavor. That gray water is not beef stock. And so you don't create that gray water. You know what I'm talking about when I say gray water? I'm not talking about the water that goes down your sink. That kind of gray water. I'm talking about when you overcrowd the pan, especially with beef. You go to stir it or you go to flip it, and there's a bunch of gray water. We don't want that. So the way we avoid it is just a little bit at a time. Take the meat out and do the next batch. That's called batch cooking. If you cook large volume, say you work for UCA or the University of Arkansas or UAMS or Baptist Hospital or one of these kinds of places where you're cooking for maybe thousands at a time, you live and die by batch cooking. You can't cook 10,000 eggs, scrambled eggs, all at one time, hold them hot, and they be good at 7 o'clock in the morning and at 10 o'clock in the morning. By the time you reach 7:30 or 8 o'clock, all the rest of your eggs have turned green because they've cooked too long. So you cook enough eggs for 7 o'clock, and then you cook another batch of eggs 20 minutes later, and another batch of eggs 20 minutes after that, and you're cooking all morning long. That's the other kind of definition of batch cooking. It's just cooking a little bit and then cooking a little bit more and then cooking a little bit more. The best approach to beef bourguignon is a little bit of meat and then a little bit of meat, and however many batches, depending on the size of vessel you're using, until you've gone through all the meat. Then you can saute your aromatics, your vegetables, your onion, your celery, your carrots, mushrooms, if you're using those, et cetera, et cetera. Just for kicks and giggles, what's the one thing that we would suggest be removed from this plate if this were the plate presentation for a restaurant?
The parsley.
Get rid of the parsley.
Mm-hmm.
It makes nice color, but
Don't need it.
no, that's
So you could chop the parsley very finely and then sprinkle it over it if you wanted to get the color.
great idea. You absolutely could. Yep. Kind of like what these people did. Now, this is taken further. There's Cipollino onions. The new potatoes are kept whole. I don't think I gave you green beans or peas. That's a little more like beef stew, and bourguignon is a beef stew. The sauce for this stew is so rich because reduction. At the end of the day, we're reducing wine, we're reducing beef stock. It's slow reduction, but what happens when we reduce these liquids? What happens to the flavor when we reduce?
It gets more intense.
Very, very much more. Why?
Because the moisture's going out.
Water dilutes, doesn't it? You add water to something and it thins it. It thins the viscosity, but it also dilutes the flavor. We're doing the opposite of that. We're removing water. And so everything, all of the flavonoids get stronger and stronger, more intense, the more water that's removed. The big difference between dry basil and fresh basil is the dry basil has had all of the water removed, and the oils in the basil, which is actually what you're tasting, are much, much stronger. That's why it doesn't take as much dry herb to equal the same, and I know it's not the same flavor, but equal the same flavor of fresh. So here's your assignment. If you haven't looked at the lab assignment per se, in Blackboard, it is your beef bourguignon, but present it deconstructed. We haven't talked about that word before. Deconstruct means, well, here, this is not a great picture, but this is very, very modern. This is an approach to beef bourguignon deconstructed. And don't ask me what this pile of stuff is right here. I have no idea.
It looked like they may have shredded it and tried to put it in a mold. That's what it looked like.
Maybe. Here's another version of more or less deconstructed beef bourguignon. And to me, this really isn't deconstructed. This is more the bourguignon is just spread out over this half circle. And this is served with pasta. That's okay. It's traditionally, classically served with mashed potatoes or creamed potatoes. Here's another one. Now, some of you, your meat may really end up this dark. That may depend a little bit on what wine do you use. You know, a Pinot Noir is pretty dark. A Cabernet is pretty dark. And so use whatever wine you want to use. And if you're not going to go the alcohol route, then you really aren't making beef bourguignon, and that's okay. You just want to substitute the wine in the recipe for more beef stock. And you're really then just making, I say just, you're making a beef stew versus a beef bourguignon. The main difference between beef stew and beef bourguignon is true beef bourguignon is actually done with Burgundy and the bourguignon name. Julia Child bringing that to the United States and writing her the art of French cooking or the art of French cuisine or whatever. She was just a big fan of any old red wine, but maintained the name Bourguignon. And just for your information, if you're wondering what this gray thing is right over here on the left and this gray thing right over here on the right, San's already turning her nose up like, oh, this is, there is even one step higher maybe in a beef bourguignon. You may serve it with foie gras. The problem with this foie gras is it is cooked to death. Good foie gras should not be this color.
It looks gross.
It does.
Very.
It looks like pebbles, you know, like a pebble you would pick up on the side of the road.
It's duck liver or goose liver.
I knew it was liver. I hate liver. Ugh.
You
it
and me
looks
both,
crumbly.
Stan.
It looks crumbly. That's how liver tastes. It's just crumbly. I can't stand it. Ugh.
When I was a little kid, I thought it was popcorn chicken on the buffet at KFC, and my dad did not correct me, and I was unpleasantly surprised. And he thought it was real funny. And I, till this day, I still open my popcorn chicken and make sure it's actually chicken and not liver in there. That was all.
That's classic. That is, and that's now recorded and will be in the UAPTC archives for generations to come. Thank you for sharing that. But don't feel bad, Christy, because you know, my dad made fun of me at one time. For those of you that have been around Central Arkansas for maybe several decades, might remember, I think it was on University, Casa Bonita. That not really buffet, but they had one Mexican plate, and you just kind of went through, and you kids, you got the Mexican plate or you got the maybe chicken fingers. I don't remember. There was Casa Bonita in the 70s, and then they kind of went away for a few years, and then there was kind of Casa Bonita came back for a few years. I'm talking good. No, this was right when it came back. So this was maybe early 80s. Anyway, we were at Casa Bonita, and if you remember when it came back, they tried for maybe 6 or 8 months an open buffet. You know, Bonanza, Western Sizzler, and the serve yourself feeding trough was kind of I don't know if it was a new idea, but it was all the rage. You pay one price and you just help yourself to the feeding trough. Well, Casa Bonita had this big mound, this big chunk. And I grew up on Velveeta and occasionally some government cheese and those cheese slicers. You know, you take your slice off of the big block of Velveeta or whatever with the cheese slicers that has the little wire and the roller. Well, they had dozens of those out. And well, I knew that was just a big mound of cheese for the taking. This Mexican food, there's cheese, and I got a separate little salad plate and started loading up with cheese. And my dad said, "What are you doing?" My mom thought it was funny. Don't do that. It's cheese. It is not cheese, son. You're making a mistake. No, look at it. It's cheese. These are cheese slicers. I'm going to load up on cheese and have a whole meal of cheese. Do you know what that big mound of stuff was? I mean, big. This looked like it was an iceberg display on some Titanic dinner or something like that. This was huge. That was a big mound of butter. And I took a great big bite of the first slice of cheese. And my mom and dad was right. That was a mistake.
It was.
But I love butter still today. It didn't ruin me completely. I don't have to check every package of the chicken nuggets to make sure that it's really chicken nuggets. But I do feel your pain just a little bit, Christy.
Yeah.
Because I help myself to a big, and in my home, the rule from my dad was, you know, especially when we go out to eat, and if we go to the feed and trough type restaurants, whatever you put on your plate,
Yes.
You eat.
I know where that's going.
you better eat it.
That's right.
Fortunately, he did make me eat a plate full of butter.
I didn't have to eat a plate full of liver after I got turned green at the table. My dad laughed a little bit. He's like, "Go put that in the trash."
Yeah. Your assignment now, I'm going to show you one more. So look at that. That doesn't look like beef bourguignon, does it?
But it sure looks good. Woo!
So here's what this is right here. I want to introduce you to one of my favorite stew dishes in the world. We don't have the class international cuisine right now. You know, the student body shrinks and it grows and it shrinks and it grows, and we're kind of coming out of a shrink time. And as our enrollment grows, we'll be able to go back to adding a few more electives, and the day is going to come that we'll go back to international cuisine as an elective course. As far as Food 2 is concerned, this week is one little foray into international cuisine. Your beef bourguignon is a French dish, and the recipe that you have is classical French method. We haven't Americanized it or anything like that. You have among the ingredients that you're picking up that is not part of your bourguignon, shrimp. Let me think. You're getting some red bell pepper. You're getting sand. Did you pick up some coconut milk?
Yes, coconut milk, green pepper, celery. I got it over there, and I forget what else, but yeah, and the shrimp and the rice.
The rice.
Uh-huh.
It's a dish that comes from Brazil. And if you print the recipe, it has the proper spelling and all of that. This is called moqueca. Moqueca de camarão. Camarão means shrimp. Moqueca means stew. So this is Brazilian shrimp stew. It is it is just as flavorful as curry. If you go back to Food One, you remember when we did shrimp curry in Food One? This is more or less a Brazilian version of that, but there's no curry paste. There's no curry powder. It is very, very, very simple. I just think it's really delicious, and it adds to our experience this week in stewing and braising, because you sear and then slow cook your beef bourguignon is a braise. Braise is always sear and stew, slow cook and liquid. If you make this, you can control the heat. I don't think you have any ingredients that make this really, really hot. In certain parts of Brazil, in the northern part of the country, Bahia, where this dish actually originates, this may put Thai food to shame. This will burn your tongue out and set your exhaust pipe on fire the next day or two after you've eaten this. I lived in Sao Paulo, which is kind of central on the East Coast, right on the coast of Brazil. And the food there is French influenced and very, very mild from a heat standpoint. So a little tomato, a little bell pepper, onion, a little celery would be okay, onion and garlic, and then the coconut milk. And because it's shrimp, if you will remember how we did the curry, I would suggest that you peel and devein the shrimp and you add the shrimp at the very, very end.
Yep.
Could do this same thing like with chicken, and you might treat that like you would do the beef bourguignon. You have two other recipes in the recipe folder just to keep this kind of international theme of soup and stew. And I went really heavy on seafood because the last 2 weeks and this week in meat and seafood, these are the 3 weeks that are really seafood heavy. And so, San, for example, if you don't want to make this moqueca, you can keep a hold of the shrimp, and for meat and seafood, you should have picked up some mussels, some
I did.
Scallops,
And oysters. No, not oysters.
clams.
No, clams. No oysters, clams and mussels and scallops. That was it.
Scallops.
Yeah.
So one of the recipes we have in Food 2 this week is cioppino. Cioppino.
Mm-hmm.
It's a multi-purpose miscellaneous seafood parts and pieces.
Mm-hmm. I see that.
Very simple seafood stew. It sounds Italian, and it is from Italian-born people, but cioppino comes from San Francisco. It's an American dish, but it comes from Italian Americans.
Okay.
San Francisco, anywhere where seafood is caught fresh, go to Boston, go to San Francisco on the West Coast, where the boats, they are working overnight. They come in early in the morning and they sell their fish fresh right on the dock, right on the piers, all morning long. When they're starting to run out of shoppers and buyers, and there's, 2 or 3 Branzino left over here. There's 3 or 4 crabs left over here. There's a couple of lobster left right here. It was common practice. Now I'm talking very turn of the century, late 18, early 1900s. It was very common practice for someone to get a small iron cauldron, start a fire, and all of the miscellaneous fish bits and pieces, and it was different every single day. They would use that stuff and make a miscellaneous fish stew, shellfish, and that is cioppino. I gave you a recipe that you can replicate this same cioppino by fish of the day, seafood of the day. It have to be exactly the fish that I tell you. It doesn't have to have mussels. It doesn't have to have shrimp. Kind of like a gumbo. New Orleans. Gumbo can have andouille sausage if you want to put andouille sausage in it. Gumbo can have shrimp or not. Gumbo can have chicken or not. Cioppino, the sauce, the soup part of the cioppino is pretty standard. It's all the fish parts and pieces. That you can do whatever you want with it. Bouillabaisse is a French version of the same kind of things. Bouillabaisse is a seafood stew, just like moqueca, just like cioppino. So we have 3 seafood stews, one from Brazil, one from Italian American immigrants, and one from France. The recipe, the specific ingredients that you're picking up this week are the bourguignon, the beef bourguignon, and the ingredients for the moqueca or the Brazilian stew. The lab assignment is for the bourguignon, but for the benefit of those of you that don't go to the school, to go to CAMI, to pick up your lab ingredients every week, that might be doing this on your own. If you want to use one of those other recipes to do the seafood stew as well, I'm perfectly okay for this lab assignment. It doesn't have to be the bourguignon. But what I want out of this lab assignment, one of your stews deconstructed. When you present it on the plate, I want to see deconstructed. This is the only lab. It's the only week that we're going to deconstruct. But it's something we need to try to get our hands and head around, just for the future of what you'll do in the industry. It's not deconstructing things is kind of a ebb and flow deal. It's not really a fad, but it does kind of come and go. Deconstructed beef Wellington is a pretty common thing to see. And so if you're familiar with beef Wellington, it's a pastry crusted beef tenderloin that has a duxelle, a mushroom paste with a little bit of mustard, and it's served with a very rich demi-glace. A deconstructed beef Wellington has all of those components separate on the plate. It may be together, like I have a piece of puff pastry, and on part of that puff pastry, I may smear some mushroom duxelle, and I have a piece of seared tenderloin, and all of that is under a little stripe of demi-glace, there is a deconstructed beef Wellington. Instead of it being served classically, it's all of those components are taken apart as it's presented on the plate. So play with that a little bit. You've got ingredients for 2 stews. I want to see a plating of 1, but deconstructed. So you won't just take your beef bourguignon and put it in a bowl and take a picture of that. Do something with it on the plate. Little beef, a little. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Good. What's up? What questions or concerns or complaints are there from the peanut gallery?
No,
So you said that it would be better to do the Bergen, whatever, however you say it, on Bourguignon on the in the crock pot, because I have an Instant Pot as well, so I'm curious.
Try it in the Instapot if you like. I do it in a crock pot because I can walk away and forget it, and I can go mow the lawn, and I can go kind of do other things. If it's on the stovetop, you kind of have to be there with it and baby it just a little bit. If it's in the oven, kind of like the crock pot, but this is one of those things I like the crock pot, and so I'll use that at home. I understand the Instapot. I don't have one. And so I'm not one to go to about how do I do this a little different? How do I time it different? You might do a little bit of research there just to make sure this is something that in a slow cooker, you can't really mess up, except you don't want to get this to the point where the chunks of meat shred.
Okay.
So this really shouldn't be just dumping in the crock pot and forget about it. There is this window. If I'm going to be away for 8 hours or so, this is a dish I need to do in my crock pot on low. If this is something I'm going to do, I want to eat after church, I think y'all know I like to talk. And so in our house, in our home, we kind of call it Daddy's got the goodbye tour. And so we may only go to church for a couple of hours, but I'll spend a couple hours visiting with people after church. And so, a good 3.5, 4 hours in the crock pot cooking while we're at church, that I'll do on high. But if I leave it on high for 8 hours in the crock pot, I'm not going to burn it up, but you've got shredded beef instead of the chunks of beef. And one of the mysteries that we want to try to solve, one of the things to experience, especially this will be deconstructed, you want the meat chunks to continue to hold their form. Don't destroy the integrity of that chunk of beef. If you cut it smaller, it'll cook a little bit faster to break down. You want it to soften. You don't want it to be chewy and have beef, a chewing gum, but you don't want it to be a shredded pot roast, or you don't want something that's going to end up being a very, very flavorful street taco or something like that. You know what I mean? Where it's all really, really shredded, and you can leave it in the crock pot. I would assume the Instapot would work the same way. You could leave it in too long. You won't burn it up, but you're going to end up with shredded meat, and we went too far. So if you do that, those of you that pick up the supplies from the culinary school, if you do that to your beef, it's going to taste marvelous. So kind of no harm, no foul that way. Chalk it up to experience, and you may want to go ahead and do the Brazilian shrimp stew for your lab, for your plate presentation, or present the shredded and see if you come up with something creative that way. I don't know. You do you, and then we'll all critique next week. How's that?
Sounds good.
Chef.
Sounds
Hey.
good.
Sorry, I got one more question and I promise I'll shut up.
It's all good.
Okay. If I do it in the crock pot or the instant pot, whichever one I decide, would you still, like the recipe says to do the mushrooms separate? Would you still do that, or would you just dump everything and roll with it?
No, I would sear the meat. I would, to get the full flavor effect for a braise. I don't even know if the recipe mentions this. I would go ahead and saute, your onions and carrots and celery and garlic, whatever other stuff you're using, and maybe get a little bit of color, especially on the onions. Not fully caramelized, but you're going to bring out a little bit of sweet if you caramelize the onions. I would keep the mushrooms. So here's the thing.
The recipe said to do it separate.
So, but yeah, here's the thing. Mushrooms are going to release water before they soak in whatever it is it's in. So mushrooms added to your spaghetti sauce. Mushrooms will thin your spaghetti sauce. If you just slice up the mushrooms and put them in raw, at the very, very least, I would saute the mushrooms or sear, see the air quotes. I would treat the mushrooms just like the beef and go ahead and add them, but cook them a little bit, pre-cook, so you get some of the release of the water in the mushrooms before you add the mushrooms to your crock pot or your Instapot. Or just know that if you add raw mushroom, that you might thin out your, we're all Southern folks, so I'll just go ahead and say gravy like all the rest of you. You'll thin your sauce maybe just a little bit. I, for one, am not much of a mushroom person. And so if it's a porcini mushroom, it's going to go in everything. If it's a cremini mushroom, which I ordered, I think that's what you're picking up. If it's a cremini mushroom, if you like portobello mushrooms, cremini mushroom is basically, you'll go to other stores, grocery stores around here, and you can buy it as a baby bella. A cremini is a specific mushroom. Cremini is not baby portobello, but the flavor and texture profile is very, very almost identical. Kind of like marjoram and oregano. Marjoram is not baby oregano, but the flavor profile of both are almost identical. Button mushrooms, in my opinion, have absolutely no purpose on the planet. I don't know why God gave us button mushrooms.
Is that the ones that are in a can?
Those are in a can. Those are the white mushrooms that you buy at the grocery store that have no taste and no flavor whatsoever. And y'all can say, but it adds texture to my tomato. No, I don't like that texture either. That texture, I don't know. I don't know what eating the booger's like, but I just imagine it's like a button mushroom. And so that has no reason for being, and this is recorded, so that's great. Don't feel like you have to use the mushrooms. Um,
Okay.
but
I
there you
like
go.
some, I don't like all, well, we all know I'm picky, so I probably shouldn't even, you guys know I'm not gonna eat all of it, so.
You don't hurt my feelings if you don't use the mushrooms at all. The mushrooms will not alter or change or add to the flavor or even the textures of what it is that you're doing in this particular dish. So beef bourguignon, while it sounds like a fancy name, this is peasant food. It is poor people's food. And during certain periods, certain eras, beef was beef's expensive. Around here today, beef is expensive. Mushrooms stretch the beef. So add a lot of mushrooms, almost an equal amount of mushrooms and beef, and you continue to have this this hearty stew that's not as expensive because of the amount of mushrooms that you add. That's kind of the story behind it. So you want to use the mushrooms? Great, fine, knock yourself out. You don't use them? Great, fine, knock yourself out. You get a certain amount, about the amount of beef that the recipe calls for. If you want to omit the mushrooms entirely, maybe you want to pick up just a little more meat. You can get some very inexpensive stew meat. If you've got some those that may have put some stuff in the freezer from the meat and seafood class, you have a little extra eye of round, some eye of round, perhaps. You can you can add to and exchange that for the mushrooms if you want. But then we start this whole process of, if you want to make more, y'all learned in Food One the proper way to scale a recipe. How many servings do you want? Scale the recipe, and you have to get. I promise you, this beef bourguignon is going to be something that you're going to want to keep out. You want to print it. You're going to want to keep this in your repertoire. Today is hot and humid for the end of October. It's crazy weather we're in right now, but this is, and the same with the shrimp stew. This is cold weather, hearty food that warms you up inside, and is some of that you've got to unbutton the top button of your pants, because even when you're full, it's so good. I just have to take one more bite, and I have to take one more bite. And it's like pre-Thanksgiving dinner and post-Thanksgiving dinner. It's so wonderful. That's what I think. So that's why I chose it, and that's why we're doing it. So anyway. Christy, did that answer the question about the mushrooms anyway?
It did.
Good. I try to be specifically vague.
The same kind of taste. We kind of like the same thing. So if it doesn't really add anything, I may not even. You know what I mean? Like I'm not
Yep.
like I just don't have to have them. So I may not mess with it.
Perfectly fine. Everybody have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
braising and stewing.
All right.